Welcome to this video on adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing decimals. Okay, so for basically the first part it says how do you add and subtract decimals? So to add or subtract decimals you must first line up the decimal points. That is very, very important when you're adding or subtracting decimals. So let's do a couple examples. You always want to look at the example and then you want to write it in column form so that you get it correctly and you don't have any difficulties. So our first problem, we're going to write 1.2, and remember we're going to line up our decimals, we're going to use our place value, plus 0.005 plus 0.319. So we are adding 1 2/10, 5 thousandths, and 3 1900ths. So we can annex some zeros or add some zeros because that really doesn't change the value of the number. We've lined up our decimal points, as you can see, and now we're going to just add. So 5 and 0 is 5. 9 and 0 is 9, and 2 plus 1 is 3. Bring down your decimal point, and 1 plus 3 is 4. So the answer to that first problem, rewrite it using your columns, show your work, 4.395 or 4 395 thousandths. The next problem, it says now you try it. So you can stop the video, rewrite it in column form, and then you can try it. This one's a little tricky. It has a negative number there. Okay, so now that you're back, you've got basically 0.12 plus negative 4.5. So if we use our column form, and remember that's a negative, you could, it's not really going to change it if we put the 4 on the top, so we could say negative 4.5 and 0.12. I'm going to put a little 0 there. And remember, when we are adding negatives, the signs are different, so we're going to subtract and keep the sign of the larger number. So I can already tell you my sign is going to be negative, and you can see where your decimal is going to go. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to go 0 minus 2. Well, I can't do that. I'm going to have to borrow. So I'm going to borrow a 1 from that. That makes that 4. So 10 minus 2 is 8. 4 minus 1 is 3. We already brought our decimal point down. And then 4 minus 0 is 4. So the answer to that question is negative 4.38. That's a little tricky because it is a negative. Okay, the next problem asks you basically is a subtraction problem. So you've got negative 9.5 minus 4.09. There's those negative signs again. So basically if you're using a number line, remember we have 0 here. We go over about negative 4.09. We're going to keep going over about negative 9.5. We're still in the negatives. So our answer is going to be negative. So let's line up our problem. Negative 9.50 plus negative 4.09. Okay, let's see. I've got 0 minus 9. I can't do that. I'm going to have to borrow. That makes that 4. That makes that 10. 10 minus 9 is 1. 4 minus 0 is 4. Oh, sorry. We're adding. Negative 9.50 and negative 4.09. Remember we just talked about the number line. We're still in the negatives. So we have to add these two together because Same sign, add them together, keep the sign. So we've got 9, 5, and then 9 plus 4, 13, and bring down that negative sign because we're still in the negative signs. You've got to watch what you're doing when you're working. Okay, so let's look at the other problem. It says, now you try. So you've got 1.08 minus 0.95. Okay, so it looks like it's pretty simple subtraction. 8 minus 5 is 3. 0 minus 9, I can't do that, so I'm going to have to borrow. That makes that 0. That makes that 10. 10 minus 9 is 1. Bring down my decimal point. I'm going to put a 0 there. So my answer is 0.13 or 13 hundredths. Okay, so the next question you can see, it says, how do you multiply decimals? Basically, to multiply decimals, you just go ahead and you multiply the decimal, and then you count using place value how many numbers are on the other side, or on the right side of the decimal sign. And we'll do some examples and look at that. And when you count that, then I'll show you how you can work backwards. The first problem you have is 5.43 times 6.2. I'm going to set that up in column form. 5.43 times 6.2. Now remember, first you're going to multiply, so you can ignore the decimal. You don't have to line them up when you're multiplying. 2 times 3 is 6. 2 times 4 is 8. 2 times 5 is 10. Okay, now I go to the next number, the 6 here. I have to put a place value 0 to keep my position. 6 times 3 is 18. Carry the 1. 6 times 4 is 24. Plus 1, 25. Carry the 2. 6 times 5 is 30. Plus 2, 32. Okay, now I'm going to add 6. 8 plus 8 is 16. 5 plus 1 is 6. 2 plus 1 is 3. And then bring down the 3. And now I'm going to go up here and I'm going to count my decimal places. 1 decimal place, 2 decimal place, 3 decimal places. Start over here to the right and go 1, 2, 3. So my decimal is going to be 33.666, or 33 and 666 thousandths. Okay, the next question we have is another multiplication problem. I'm going to go ahead and line it up. So you go ahead and write it in column form and line it up. Go ahead and start it and give it a try before we start going over it. Okay, so I've got it in my column form. I'm going to ignore the decimal and just multiply. 5 times 8 is 40. I'm going to bring over the 4. 5 times 0 is 0, but I have to bring down the 4. 5 times 0 is 0, and then 5 times 1 is 5. Now I come down here, I have to put a place value 0, and I'm at the next number, the 7. 7 times 8 is 56, so I'm going to put a 6, carry the 5. 7 times 0 is 0, I'm going to put the 5 down. 7 times 0 is 0, and 7 times 1 is 7. Okay, now I'm down to this number here, the third number. So I have to put 2 place value zeros. And then I go 8 times 8 is 64. Carry the 6. I'm having a hard time carrying the 6. 8 times 0 is 0 plus the 6. And then 8 times 0 is 0. And 8 times 1 is 8. Now we have to add all of those up. 0, 6 plus 4 is 10. 5 plus 4 is 9, plus 1 is 10. Okay, so we said 6 plus 4 is 10, carry the 1. 5 plus 4 is 9, plus 1 is 10, carry the 1. 6 plus 5 is 5 and 5 is 10, 11, 12. 7 plus 1 is 8. And then bring down the 8. Now we're going to count our decimal places. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Start here and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's where our decimal goes. So we have 0.882000. The last thing it asks you is, how do you divide decimals? Well, when you divide decimals, you need to remember that you have the quotient is the answer. For having some difficulties with the board up here. So the quotient, I'm going to bring it down farther. Okay, the quotient is the answer. The dividend is what we're dividing into, and the divisor is what's going to go on the outside. Same type of thing. Okay, so our first problem, you see you have 9.8, so read it out loud, 9.8, which will go into, that's our dividend, divided by 0.5, and that is the way it's written at first. Okay, that's also the same as 9.8 divided by 0.5. So what we can do first is we always divide by a whole number. So when you move it to make a whole number, you have to move inside the box. And now we have a new problem. 5 goes into 98, or 98 divided by 5, because we moved the decimal. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that division. 5 into 98. 5 goes into 9 one time. 1 times 5 is 5, and then you're going to subtract. 9 minus 5 is 4. Bring down the 8. 5 goes into 48 9 times. 9 times 5 is 45. Subtract and you get 3. Put your decimal here. Annex a 0. Bring down a 0. I'm sorry, 8 minus 5 is 3. Okay, you put a 30. 5 goes into 30 how many times? About 6. So your answer should be 19.6, and you can always check that. Okay, so the next question says, now you try. So let's look at that. Basically, you have 25 divided by 8, or 25.8 divided by 3. 3 goes into 25. 3 doesn't go into 2, so make sure you keep everything lined up. 3 goes into 25 8 times. 8 times 3 is 24. You're going to subtract. 25 minus 24 is 1. I'm going to put my decimal where it belongs. First thing, bring down the 8. 3 goes into 18. How many times? 6. 6 times 3 is 18. I'm going to subtract, and that leaves me with 0. So as you can see, we've done a little bit of adding, some subtracting, multiplying, dividing. You can always re-watch the video, rework the problems, make up your own problems to try. You need to practice. It is not the easiest thing in the world, but you can do it. So the question here in our summary question would be, why would you need to know how to work with decimals in the real world? So use a complete sentence and answer that question.